Hi, this is Shauna with New to the Country Life, and today we're going to work on some checkerboards. So I have these molds in like I call them micro, small, and large, and I've pre-done part of these for the video, but I want to be able to show you how to do them. So to start with, I'm going to show you mica powder. And I've painted almost all the squares in here. Still have to finish the rest. So to prep this mold, I sprayed it with mold release. This is Cast and Craft mold release and conditioner. I'll put a link to where it's at on Amazon. You need to shake it because it gets stuff stuck in the bottom. And I think it's kind of silicone based, so you kind of have to shake it up to make sure that's mixed in. Spray the mold and let it dry, being sure to get the edges because that's where a lot of molds have problems. And these checker molds, it doesn't matter which size, they sometimes stick here on these little cross hatches. So it's important to use a mold release if you want to make sure your molds don't stick and get ruined. The mica powder I used is from Arteza, and it comes in 2 different kits. One of them has like 60 colors, and they're these smaller 5-gram bottles, and then the larger ones are like this size, but it only has like half the colors, and those are 10-gram bottles. So I buy both because I use a lot of mica. This one is the light gold, and when we're painting, I get these makeup brushes at Family Dollar. You can get them at almost any dollar store. So you just lightly get some on, and I try to get the extra off, and then you start painting it in your squares. Now, as you're painting these, mica is very staticky, so if you're not careful, it'll jump all over your board. So you just want to kind of control where you put it so that you're not getting mica where you don't want it. And I'm going to show you how to clean up if you do get it where you don't want it, because it happens. As I paint these squares in, you'll see I get too much on it, so I just go to the next square and kind of rub some off. And be sure to get in all your corners so that you have a nice crisp board. We just have like 3 more squares to do because I already painted most of these. And I'm going to show you next how to do the other squares with alcohol ink and kind of make them marbly. I think we're going to do black in this one. And I'm going to do, so when I put the alcohol ink in, I won't mix it a whole lot so that it kind of makes a clear and black swirl. And then whatever color I choose to put in the background, that way of this board will show through that. And it looks really cool. Okay, so we got all those squares painted in now. To clean my brush, I use these shop towels, and I just spray a little mist of, this is isopropyl alcohol. I spray that on, and I just run my brush over it and try to get as much color out as possible so it doesn't transfer for the next one. I blow this off. You can see the extra powder on here. So I just kind of blow it, and that cleans it up. And then there's places in here where I don't want it, like in the edge of that right there. It's right here. So I take a little corner of my towel, I spray a little bit of alcohol on it, and I use that to gently wipe where I don't want mica powder, so it just cleans the board up and keeps it looking nice that way, because you want everything to be crisp. And if I got it in a square where I don't want it, I just dab it and clean it out of there. So now that's nice and crisp, and we'll move on to doing the other squares. I'm only going to mix a tiny bit of this because I have the next step done, and I'm just going to show you how to do this real quick, and then we'll move on to the next board, to the next step. Always wear gloves when working with resin, and it's suggested that you wear a respirator. I don't, but you really probably should, because even the low VOC resin still puts off an odor, and it's just probably safer to do that. I do wear gloves because if I don't, it makes my hands crack and bleed. So just a word of warning there. And I'm just gonna mix a tiny bit here just to show you. So this is KS resin, and it's a 1-to-1. So I'm only gonna mix like 10 milliliters. So we're gonna start with 5 of the resin, and I use the Liquid Art Ultra UV epoxy. It's got UV protectant in it. So it'll keep your resin from turning yellow. And then we're going to put 5 more. It's 5 more of the hardener. And again, that's the KS resin Liquid Art Ultra UV epoxy, and I'll put a link to that in the description of this video as well, with a code to save you some money if you put that code in. And I over poured that by a tiny bit, so I'm just gonna top it off and make it right so that it's actually 1-to-1, because I poured too fast and got too much hardener. Adding extra hardener does not make your project harden better, faster. It actually will inhibit it because the ratios are not correct. So if you're having problems with that, it's more likely heat or mixing too little resin. When you mix a little bit of resin like this, you stand more of a chance of it not curing properly, because it cures by creating its own, I believe they call it an exothermic reaction. And when it's not enough of it, it can't do that. So it may harden but not firm up solid. So if you're having that problem, that's probably what it is. Okay, so we mix this until we see that it's clear. You don't want any little streaks running through it, and you want to make sure that you rub the sides as well as the bottom. Get it all mixed, and wipe your stick off occasionally. And if you're worried about bubbles, you can warm your resin slightly in hot water. Just make sure you don't get water in the resin, because they don't react well together. It's my daughter's birthday, and you probably hear her and her friends goofing off in the back of the video, and they're all in another part of the house, and I have myself shut in my workroom. So I apologize for that extra noise if you're hearing it. Okay, so we have that mixed, and now we have our black alcohol ink. This is Tim Holtz, or I'm sorry, this one's Pinata brand, and I like their black better, so that's what I use. And I'm just going to put a couple drops in. When you're mixing color, you want to try to keep it less than 5% of the volume, whatever kind of color that you decide you're putting in it. So pay attention to how much you're putting in. And I know that this ended up being 20 milliliters, and I'm putting in 2 drops of black. So when I go to mix this to do the rest of the board, I'll know what my ratios are. So as I mix that, you can see it's not thoroughly mixed. you can see clear and you can see black. And to do the board, what we're going to do is we're just going to paint it in the little squares very carefully. You don't want to make a mess in the squares where you don't want it. And I'll do a couple here and show you. I'm just putting a couple dollops there. And I have a tool here. Hold on while I find it. Oh, this is, it's a paper tool, but I find that it works very well for working with the molds and color and stuff, because the ends have little balls on it, and it keeps the, like you can mix on the board on your molds with it, and it won't cut your molds because they're soft little round ends, as opposed to like a stick or a toothpick that can scratch your mold. So you can see some of this is kind of settling out already, and some of it needs some help. So I just take the balled end and I just start pulling it to all the corners, making sure it's touching and filling that little square. You can always put more in, don't put too much, because if it starts overflowing, there's no good way to control that. And if you do happen to get some, like, I don't know if you can see this little corner right here. I dropped some there. Go ahead and just let that dry, and then you can flake it off tomorrow and be able to just repaint that gold in that corner. So we'll just do a couple more little squares here. And again, we just fill them in to the edges. And I'm going to try to hold this up here and see if you can see how it's kind of marbled. And I don't want to hold it up too long because I don't want it to run out of my squares. But you can see it's marbled in there. So I'll finish that one off camera, and we're going to switch to the next one that I have done. This one is blue mica. The color that I used is the sapphire blue, and this is white and clear alcohol paint mixed in the resin. So this one's all ready to do the next step. And what I'm going to do on this one is, for the background, I'm going to use pearl white mica, and I'm going to use some white alcohol ink, and I'm going to mix them so they swirl together for the background. And I think I'm going to put a little bit of silver in there. So these micro molds take 8 ounces to fill. So here we have our measuring cup. We're going to go ahead and make 8 ounces. So we'll start with 4 ounces of resin, and then we're going to add 4 ounces of hardener, and we'll stir that up, and then we'll divide it into our colors that we're going to do. So I'm going to show you a couple different techniques, and you can mix and match all this stuff. I have another video where I did the give it your best shot boards, and I show in there the technique of how to use alcohol ink and make it look like cotton candy floating in there. That's really pretty on these boards as well. I like to make my boards look as good on the back as they do the front, so when somebody turns them over you can see it good. They're a pleasure to look at on both sides that way. Again, we're mixing a lot this time, so we need to make sure we get the bottom scraped, the sides scraped. Make sure you're mixing that really well. And I don't worry about bubbles too much because I go back over it with flame at the end or spritz it with alcohol depending on the application I'm doing. Like that one I just started painting the black in, because there's exposed mold in the other squares, I won't use fire for that. I'll use alcohol to spritz on it, and that'll pop the bubbles. When the mold is full, I do the fire on it, and I try to just be kind around the edges and not burn the edge of the mold, because you don't want that to, you know, then stick to your resin project like one of my other videos happened this morning. So I made a video on that. Okay. So again, we wipe the stick and just make sure that that's all mixed as thoroughly as possible. It's clear. There are bubbles in it, but it is clear. I'm going to, before I do anything else, show you how I do the mold release, because I want to make sure that my edges are done. Since I've wiped them off, you know, to clean them up, I always just recoat the edges with some mold release. And I do that just by spraying it on a little piece of paper towel, and I run it right around the edge without touching where I just painted, just to be sure that my edges aren't going to stick. And I'm going to show you this real quick. So when I originally poured the white in here, I got some right here on the edge, and it wouldn't hurt anything because that's the color I'm going to put in, but I'm going to show you how to get it off gently. So I use the small end with the tiny little ball, and I just work under the corner of it, and it will just pop right out. So now that's not a problem anywhere, and I don't see anywhere in the blue where I've got something I don't want. So I think we're good to go. I'm going to take 3 of these colors. I'm going to make 3 colors. I'm going to do 2 that are white and 1 silver, so it has a little bit of silver in it. So I'm going to divide these into 3 cups. And I prefer to mix color in my disposable cups because cleaning the silicone ones is not very fun once you have color in them. They're not as easy to clean as if they're just clear. So we're just going to divide that out. That one doesn't have as much as the other 2 because that's going to be the silver accent. I keep wax paper down so that if I dribble, it doesn't ruin my table, but I also don't like it getting on my sleeves, so I always try to, you know, kind of clean it up. It's almost impossible to get out of clothes once it's in clothes, so I try to keep it clean. Okay, with the powder, a little bit goes a long ways. So I use a toothpick, or I'm sorry, a popsicle stick, and for this much I'll use a scoop about like that, and you just dump it in. And when you go to mix it, the powder wants to fly up a lot, so it's best if you can kind of fold it in like if you're baking, and then that way it starts to break down and get wet, and then it won't fly out. If you just like hit your popsicle stick in the middle of it, it'll all fly up at you, and you really shouldn't breathe this either, so a mask would be good. So I mix that until I can't see any chunks in there any longer. So it gets nice, and it does have bubbles, but you can see it has like a shimmer to it. The micas give you a shimmer where alcohol inks don't. And you can mix alcohol inks with, sorry, I was counting. You can mix alcohol inks with micas as well, because some of the micas are kind of transparent, and unless you do that, sometimes you can see through them, and it just depends on what look you're going for. So again, I'm going to mix this one pretty thoroughly because I want it to actually be white. I don't want that swirly clear in there. I want it to be a solid white. So there you can see it's a solid white. And then let me get my silver. Metallic colors in alcohol ink, you need to shake them up because everything separates, and most of them have a little ball in there, so you shake it until you can hear the ball moving around freely. The white has a ball, the black has a ball, and most of the metallic colors do. This is a pinata silver, and it has a shimmer to it, almost like if you were doing mica. So I'm going to put probably about 5 drops in here. And then we're going to mix that thoroughly. And that gives us a nice shimmery silver. Okay, so to pour the board, I'm going to get it here where I don't have to move it, hopefully, again afterwards, because once it's poured, it's hard to move. And we're just going to start with white mica, and we're going to pour it just around the board. And we're just going to kind of spread it, and I usually try to go around the outer edges first. I'm going to stop and show you what this is. In my mixing cup, I had some clear left from last time I mixed, and you can do that if you're doing something like this. It'll just go in there and you'll never know it was there. If it was a different color, you would see it, but where it's the same color, you're not ever going to see that. So that's what that was, in case you're wondering. So I just kind of randomly pour it around, and I try to catch the edges around that first strip, and then just randomly through the center. And there you can kind of see what I was talking about with the micas can be translucent. You can still see that blue through the white mica that I just put down. So if I wanted that to be completely solid, I would add white alcohol ink in with it. But in this case, what we're doing is mixing them to create kind of a swirly effect. So I'm not actually going to combine them completely, just mix them around. Okay, so this is the white alcohol ink. And I just kind of go around, and I don't try to fill in everything. Like I said, I don't want them to be solid white, but if you add that, it gives it a marble effect. And we just kind of go around the edges. And we're going to swirl this in just a minute with the little ball tool. But right now we're just going to get this in here. I'm just kind of scraping the cup because I know it takes all 8 ounces to do this board. I just want to make sure I get all that in there. Resin's expensive, so I'm big on using as much of it as I can when I mix it. Okay, and now we have the silver. So we're going to go add veins of silver through this. And for this, I'm going to kind of go up high and do a thinner line and just kind of weave it around in there. Not really any pattern, just kind of random. Resin flows until it reaches the point where it's setting up. So even if I make a pattern in this, it's not going to stay that pattern. If you have a specific pattern you're trying to get in there, the best thing you can do is let this stuff sit up for quite a while until it's sticky, yet you can still play with it with a tool. You don't want it like sticky to where you pull this up and it comes up like candy. You still want it to be able to move, but it's almost to that point where it's like candy, because if you wait that long, then it just becomes a big gooey mess and it doesn't level out and stay like it's supposed to. So you can see this is not, you know, a very pretty pattern on here right now. Let's see if we can get a little better light where you can see it a little better without having the ring on it. Maybe not. Does that work? Hopefully you can see that pretty good. Okay, so we're going to take the big end and I'm just going to start swirling it. So it creates kind of a swirl pattern in there. And I'm going to do that through the whole board. And that's what makes it look more like marble than just random squiggly lines everywhere. I go up to the corners and stuff because I want that marble look to go all the way. And as I'm doing this, I'm being careful to try not to touch the bottom of the mold because I don't want to scratch any of that blue paint so that it won't look funny when the mold comes out. Okay, let's see. I'm going to pull you in and see if you can see that a little better. Now that, like I said, that will not stay that way. I'll come back and check it in an hour or so. And what it's going to do is that stuff flows. Air causes it to flow. If your table's slightly off, it'll cause it to flow. So I take my tool and I just go back in and I move it where I want it, and then it should stay where I want it at that point because it's not going to be so liquidy. And let's clean up this. I'm going to stick the other mold on here, and we're going to work on this watermelon mold here. Okay, so my daughter wanted one that had watermelon colors. This is the same techniques I showed you before. The green is mica powder, and it's the spring green color from Arteza, and we're using raspberry. This is Tim Holtz Ranger Alcohol Ink, the raspberry color. And so the green is painted on with the brush like I showed for the alcohol ink. This is done exactly like we did the black and the clear swirl. So you can see through them. So whatever color I put behind it, it's going to show through really well. And the reason I'm showing you this is because the alcohol ink sprayed over into the green. I'm going to show you how to fix that. So you get yourself a little paper towel, spray a tiny bit of alcohol on it, and remove it wherever you see that you need to. So I have 2 spots, I think, that I've got to redo here. Oh, 3. So we want the alcohol ink off there. So we clean those 3 spots. We're going to grab our brush and we're going to go back in and paint that. And all we're doing is we're just touching that up so that that's solid green again. That'll give you a nice crisp set. Because one thing you don't want to do if you're selling these or making them for yourself is you don't want them to be sloppy. So we got that looking all nice again. Clean off the brush. Okay, for this one I want to do a glitter background, and I've chosen this pink voltage. It's from polyglitter.com, and I think that's gonna make that pop and you'll be able to see it through the front side. So again, we're gonna mix up 8 ounces of resin. We start with the KS resin portion, the liquid art ultra UV epoxy, and then we put in 4 ounces of the hardener. And stir it well again. Probably should stir it, like, to me they tell you stir 3 minutes. You can stir 3 minutes and not have your resin stirred well. You can stir for 1 minute and you can have it stirred really well, but you may have a ton of bubbles. So it just depends on your style. I'll tell you that when your resin is mixed correctly, you won't see any little trails going through it where one of the resins hasn't mixed with the hardener or vice versa. It will be clear. So follow the recommendations from the manufacturer of the resin you get, but if they tell you to mix it 3 minutes and you're still seeing those little tails through there, your resin's not mixed properly, so you'll still want to mix some more. And this particular resin has quite a long pot life. If you don't know what pot life means, that means how long the resin is workable before it starts getting hard. I do a lot of stuff all at once, and so I like a resin that has a long pot life. And this stuff, I can still pour it at about 45 minutes. So that works great for me, because like the black I mixed up earlier for those squares on that, I'll still be able to go in and paint those in that gold and black checkerboard just fine. Okay, so you can see it's got bubbles, but it is clear, and we're going to take care of the bubbles in a minute here. And this one, we're just going to do solid glitter in it. And there's not a specific measurement for glitter. But what you do want to keep in mind is glitter will sink to the bottom of the mold, which will end up being your top. So if you want to see glitter through the whole thing, you either add quite a bit of glitter so that it's kind of thick, or you let this set up for a little bit before you pour it so that the glitter stays suspended in it better. For this one, we're just going to mix it up, and you can see I've got it quite thick. When you pull it up, it's quite thick, so it should have glitter almost all the way to the back. It won't settle to where it's a clear back. You'll still be able to see glitter through it. And I'm mixing through the whole thing so that as I pour it, it's the same consistency through the whole thing. And we're just going to set this stick down, and then we'll just pour over the mold. I use a little cup upside down and I kind of put my stick on it so it's not sticking to my table. I'm cheap, so I reuse wax paper as long as it stays flat and it's not making the mold misshapen. I continue to use it. So here we go, we're just gonna pour it. I start around the edges when I do this technique and let it flow into the corners. That way you're less likely to get bubbles in the corners and in the front of your mold. And then I kind of just start filling in, and it's self-level, so it will fill the whole thing in, and you might have to help it here and there, but I usually would transfer this to another container because it's hard to get the glitter out of the silicone. But I'm out of my big disposable mixing cups right now. So you can see that 8 ounces takes it right up to the edge of the mold, which is where you want it, so it has a nice edge to finish with. And you can see bubbles are starting to come up to the surface already. You can see them all through there and in this previous one. So there's a couple options. You can buy these little butane lighters. If I was to get another one, I would get the next size bigger. This one runs out of butane quite quickly. This one, you turn the knob and just hit a button, and I turn it down and just use it across the main part. You can see the bubbles popping. Don't spend too much time. You don't want to burn it. You don't want to burn your mold. And you can always come back again in a couple minutes. And then we'll do this one while we're at it. You get lots of air bubbles when you do glitter because there's lots of room for air to hide within the glitter. So I do this a couple times. You can also use a propane torch, and that's actually my preferred way. It's a little more aggressive fire, but to me it works better. But you have to be careful because it is bigger. It can catch the paper on fire, stuff in your shop on fire. So just be aware of that. And if you're spraying alcohol on anything to pop bubbles, make sure that has cooked off if you decide to go with fire, because alcohol is flammable and alcohol ink is flammable. So just be really aware of what you're doing there. Okay, so this is a board I did previously for this video, which has all the techniques in it, and I just wanted to be able to show you. So the green in here is done with mica powder that I painted on. The purple was the technique where we mix some alcohol ink with the clear resin and leave it only partially mixed so that it looks marbled. And the back of this one, I did, this is the white mica swirled, and I didn't wait long enough for this purple alcohol ink to dry completely. So when I poured that in, it picked some of it up, and you can see it didn't affect the squares on this side, but it kind of made a cool effect on this side because it pulled that in and gave it kind of a more lightning effect. And this one, I didn't come back and stir it. So you can see it had a pattern similar to the one I did earlier. And just by letting it set, everything kind of flowed to the middle. So everything's, you know, coming here to the center. If I wanted that pattern back on there that I had originally, I could have came in just before this set up and got hard and, you know, made that pattern back in there again. But I just wanted to show you what a finished board looks like so that you get an idea. And this is a 7-inch board, and nobody makes checkers this small. So I made my own mold, and so I went and searched and found a set of little mini checkers that would fit on here, and I made my own mold. And so for that board, I produced checker pieces in green and purple. Just to give you an idea what they look like on there. And then I also produced a mini chest set. And for those pieces, I did the same glitter on the back. I should have mentioned what I did on the back. This also had a color shifting glitter in it. And that glitter is called Nymeria, and it's from Crescent. Sorry, I can't read it. Crescent something glitter. I can't read it. I'm sorry. I'll have to look it up and I'll put it in the link. But Nymeria, and it's color shifting. So one way is purple, one way is green. I don't know if you can see that very good in the video. And then, so I poured that on, and then I poured the mica over top of it. The glitter sunk, like I was talking about, because I didn't have it very thick in there. And I only did 4 ounces of it and 4 ounces of the white mica. So that's how I got this effect. But for the pieces, I wanted that glitter to show through. So I used that same glitter, the color shifting glitter, and I put it really heavy in my mix. And so the pieces came out perfect. This is the 2-piece molds that you glue the pieces together to get a set. Lots of you probably have those or have seen them. So that's how I came up with the pieces. And the other half is a white and clear marbled. So I hope you can see that. By only partially mixing the white alcohol ink in with the resin, it creates this marble effect. So this is a set I call it a combo set. So it comes with the chest and checkers and the little travel board or micro board. But that's putting all the techniques that we did in the other boards together into one board. So I just wanted to show you all that. This is another one I did. Both sets of these squares are painted in with mica, and we poured the back with blue glitter, just like we just did this magenta one. And that glitter was see-through, basically, because it was so fine. So on the back side you can see the glitter, but you can see the chessboard too. And that, even though the mica on the front is not glittery, that glitter comes through, so you slightly see a shimmer around on the board itself, but around the edges it's very glittery. I don't know if we're getting that in the light very good. But just to give you an idea, you can mix and match techniques, and you can scale them up for bigger boards. Exact same techniques, just scale them up. I hope that helps. Please share my videos. I'm brand new on YouTube, so if you could subscribe and share them, that would be a great help. And if you have anything else that you want me to make and show you how to do it, just comment below and I'm happy to do it. Thanks.